All right, so here we are. We're continuing on in Revelation. We're in our sixth one in Revelation, which as we've looked at Revelation, we've actually continued in Revelation from, this is part of a much larger sermon series where we've been looking at all the writings of John. So we looked at his epistles first, then we looked at his gospel, and now we're closing looking at Revelation. And what we've seen with John is the fact that he sees things on multiple levels. So of course in Revelation he's going to be talking about like big antichrist, like all big issues. So you see the big spiritual warfare stuff. He's going to see angels battling. He's going to be talking about that stuff. So John sees things like that. But then in his epistles, he talks about Antichrist being anybody that pulls us away from the gospel mission. So in a sense, kind of little a Antichrist. So John writes both of these things. So while he sees things as big on the macrocosm, big spiritual battles, he sees that those big spiritual battles kind of are lived out on our day-to-day lives and how we make our choices. So he sees that kind of thing happening. In his gospel, we see the same thing. He starts out in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He starts out with these big theological ideas. That's what drives his gospel. But then you see that because of who God is and who Jesus is the Word, he's the Word of life, he's the I am. That's who Jesus is. And because of this, he asks us to love the greatest, like this is my greatest commandment, right? That you love one another. Greater love has no one than to lay down your life for their brothers, and I call you brothers. That's so big spiritual truth leads to changed life. That's kind of his deal. Now, when we get to the Revelation, one of the challenges with Revelation is the Apocalypse of John might be the other way that it's called, the other name, the last book of the Bible. One of the challenges with it is, again, because it's a prophecy, it's done in imagery, it's not necessarily literal. It's true, but it's not necessarily literal. So it follows that. And because of that, it's not necessarily one next to the next one to the next. It's not necessarily consecutive. So we recognize that it's teaching truth, but it's not teaching it so that we get a calendar and say, at year this happens. At year this happens. So I will say that if anybody comes down and says, absolutely, I know it's going to go this, and this, they're making a little bit strong of a statement. They might be right, but honestly, they might be accidentally right. Because there's an element also where the symbolic nature of it is that it might be pointing to something that something else copies. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, here's something. Let's pretend that you meet two people that are attending this church, that have attended this church. And you meet them and you go, boy, these two look like each other. This guy must be copying that guy. But that's not necessarily the case. It could be that both of these people are trying to copy Jesus. So because they're trying to copy Jesus, there's similarity. Does that make sense? So then also in prophecy, that's one of the reasons why now going forward in time, you will see prophecy get fulfilled multiple times because there's a certain truth underneath the prophecy that kind of ripples through history. Does that make sense? We'll get to it once we start talking about locusts. We'll get to that here in a second. We're going to be looking at 4 chapters right here. But the other thing I wanted to say is this. The other challenge is that sometimes in these dreams, sometimes in the dreams the locust is locust, sometimes the locust not locust. Like think about the prophecies that were given to Pharaoh in the story of Joseph. He has 2 dreams, right? One time it's cows and one time it's corn, right? But is it 2 different famines or one famine? It's only one famine, so he has multiple dreams of the one famine. Same sort of thing. When Daniel sees the future, he sees one dream that sees different beasts coming forward, right? And it's the nations moving forward in history. But he also has a dream where there's a statue with the gold and the bronze and all that. It's also the history. So sometimes you have multiple things that are telling the same story. Does that make sense? So when we're looking in Revelation, here we go. We have 7 seals being broken. And then we have 7 trumpets that are happening. And then later we're going to have 7 bowls of wrath. It could be that they're all nested together like that. They're all the same tone. It's 3 dreams that are the same. It could be that. The other thing, the other element of it is it could be this. The way that it's played out there is you see the 7 seals, and then as the 7th seal is broken, we have 7 trumpets, and then as the 7th trumpet, we have 7 woes. Does that make sense? It's kind of like Russian nesting dolls. You open, oh look, I got 7 trumpets. Oh look, I got 7 woes. You know that. Now you're like, wow, Rick, that's a lot of ways that it could be. Yes, it all could be all of those things. But the reality is this: when we read Revelation, it promises to be a blessing to us, not because we know exactly how the last few years of history is going to roll out. That's not important. But what is obvious, no matter what your understanding is of how it's interpreted, you're going to come back away knowing the character of God. You're going to know the long-suffering nature of God and the justice. No matter how you read it, no matter how you interpret it, and that's the blessing. You're also going to see, unfortunately, you're going to see the willful disobedience of humanity. And you're going to see that. And you're going to see the foolishness of standing up against God. Those are things that you're always going to come away with Revelation, whether or not you see this is this or this is that. We'll come to that. Does that kind of make sense? All right, now our passage, here's our passage. Our passage is going to start out right here with these 7 angels, with 7 trumpets in chapter 8. If you want to open up your Bible, that's where we're going to be at. So Revelation chapter 8, and we're going to go from that all the way to the end of chapter 11. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because there's actually a picture of this. There's a reason for it. Do you guys remember the story of Jericho? Okay. So, what did they do in Jericho? You guys remember any of the cliff notes of Jericho?
They walked around for 7 days.
Yes.
And they blew trumpets.
And they blew trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
They had trumpets in front. They had 7 trumpets in front. And then the Ark of the Covenant. And then they come into the land and take it. That is imagery that should be in our head as we're reading this. So when we see the 7 angels at the very beginning here, it's with trumpets. We're supposed to go, I know the story with trumpets. There's a story with trumpets in the Bible. Jericho. And that's I'll tell you this. I know a lot of people like, oh, the eagle, it's got to be America. They'll look and they'll try to find things. This is helicopters. They'll try to find something where they're like, I'm sure that this is it. Listen, they might be right. They might be right. I don't care about that because I don't think that that's important. The Bible's always been true. It's always been important. So if the Bible reflects on the story of the Bible, I go, grab onto that link because that is deliberate and that is eternal. And then it doesn't matter whether or not there's America or no America. Then it doesn't matter if there's Huns or no Huns, because that's also been anyway. So I put some artwork up there of the ark being led by trumpets. I thought that was fun. All right, so you guys ready? All right. So last week we looked at the 4 horsemen, right? So the 7 seals, we had the 4 horsemen, which was kind of, we talked about the gospel going out. We talked about the nature of that being the first one. We talked about the woes and the judgments against all the kind of the false idols is kind of what we see as that. But we also see that there's a pause. That's another constant thing, is the fact that God is always restraining. He's not doing absolute judgment. He's restraining the judgment because of his grace and mercy. God would be just to zap everybody that's a sinner dead right now. He would be totally just. And he would still be good. He would be totally good. Because we're guilty. Boom. But he doesn't do that. He delays because he gives a chance for repentance. Because not only is he just, but he's merciful. And that's the character that we're going to see. Does that make sense? Oh, and I remember, this was such a good point last week. And I just wanted to remind us that. Remember how when we see that they're getting ready to do the judgment, and the first thing, and then God pauses it during the 6th seal, and he says, wait, we got to go out and seal people, right? And that, by the way, that's Gosh, that's not just punctiliar at one point in time. I really do believe, firmly believe, that that is continuing the mission of the church. When we go and make disciples of all nations, we are functioning as that angel, going out and sealing people so that get the mark of the Lamb on them so that they're protected. So that is continuing. So that's kind of God's mercy. That's why. Why didn't this happen right after the crucifixion? Because God paused it at the sixth sign so that we continue. Why he's tarrying? Because, oh, I love that image of him waiting at the bridge saying, come on, you can cross right before. That's the idea, before the bridge goes up. That's the picture. Okay. So that's the picture we want to get right before judgment, because then we get to this one. When the Lamb broke the seventh seal on the scroll, there was silence throughout heaven for about a half hour, and I saw seven angels standing before God, and they were given seven trumpets. So that's how we see the seven angels, seven trumpets. Now, is there more symbology about seven? Yeah, a lot of times. The number seven is because it's the Sabbath, it's the wholeness, it's completeness. When it comes to judgment of humanity, it's all of humanity. We see some images like that they use consistently. I take the lowest level of authority when I use kind of this, but I'll just throw it out there. When Jesus feeds the multitude that is primarily Jewish, he ends up with 12 baskets at the end. There's some symbology in it. When he feeds the group that has a bunch of Gentiles in it, those multitudes, he ends up with 7 barrels. And there's a little bit of, the nation 7. When the 12 disciples go to their focus is Jesus sends them to Israel, is where he sends the 12 disciples. But when the church is having problems with their Gentiles not getting food, they make 7 deacons. So they kind of do that for the nations, for the people. It's a silly little thing, but it's a consistent theme through the scriptures. So I just throw it out there. So we see the 7 trumpets coming before. So we do see that. Now that silence before that, a lot of people go, oh, it's 6. It's half an hour. So when it's a time plus a time and half a time, that's 3.5 years. We're told that's 3.5 years. So therefore, half a time or half an hour would be 6 months. So this is 6 months of silence. Is that what's important here? I don't know. I think that's maybe. I'll say maybe. I'll say what is absolutely different is that this breaks the narrative. Because everywhere else in the narrative, we have had everything we've seen is people singing, holy, holy, holy around the throne. So the throne room of heaven, everybody's been declaring and worshiping God. And at this moment, everything stops. And it stops because of the solemn nature of the judgment. Because they're getting ready the army's getting ready to march. And that's what we're seeing, is we're seeing God's marching into the land. Just like the Israelites marching into the promised land. That parallel, we see that same parallel of them getting ready and preparing for coming in. Then another angel with a golden incense burner came before and stood before the altar, and he took a great amount of incense that was given to him and mixed with the prayers of God's people as an offering on the gold altar before the throne. What prayers are we talking about? Well, we've seen prayers of the prayers coming up to heaven, but we've also seen the martyrs from the earlier this one who are like, hey God, how long are people going to be victimized? How long this is kind of that idea of how long will children be victimized by predators? How long will injustice happen? How long will people be taken advantage of? How long? That sense of when is the world going to be remade to the garden? That sense, that's kind of what's kind of coming up here, and that's motivating what's happening, is the idea that it's not going to be forever. The suffering won't be forever. Then the smoke of the incense mixed with the prayers of God's holy people ascended up to God from the altar, which the angel had poured, them out. Structurally, in the story, what this is exactly like is if you look at the very beginning of Jonah. In the very beginning of Jonah, God is talking about the suffering and the prayers of what's happening in Nineveh, and what's happened because of Nineveh has raised up to him. And then he goes, therefore he sends Jonah in. And he sends Jonah in to pronounce judgment, right? But not only does he pronounce judgment, with that judgment is also the potential for mercy, which is why Jonah doesn't want to do it, right? That's what he says at the end. He's like, I knew you were merciful and you were going to forgive him. That's why I didn't want to go. That's spoiler alert. If you haven't read Jonah, That's how it ends. Jonah shows up, right? And what happens to the Ninevites, who had been bad guys and in an open rebellion to God for a long time, is the Ninevites, if you don't know, the Assyrians. They're the Assyrians. They're the big baddies in a lot of the Old Testament. They repent. And God's merciful to them. So that's the sense of it. So when we see this image, we also should see the story from Jonah layered in on top of this. These are stories that we need to be layering in, all of them, because they're all woven together. So we've got the judgment. And it's the same thing with Jericho. Before Jericho was sitting there, and the people they're wandering around in the wilderness. We know from the conversation with Rahab, the harlot, right? The prostitute. In Jericho, when the spies talk to her, what does she say? She says, hey, we know God's coming in for judging the city. And people are terrified. They had all that time. You know what? Okay, so they go in and they wipe out Jericho. Do they wipe out Rahab and her family? No, because they ask for mercy, right? But you know what also they don't do? Is they don't pursue them out of the land. They just had to leave the land. Because the land had been made special as a place, as like a temple. The land is established as a temple. It wasn't a genocidal, go find any Canaanite in the world and kill it. It's drive them out of the land because they can't be there because this land is supposed to represent Yahweh. Does that make sense? And we're going to see that Revelation is kind of the retelling for exactly the same reason. Because the purpose is that he's trying to create this space, or God is creating this space for God to walk with humanity again in justice. In space, justice, not injustice, one word. Then the angel filled the incense burner from the fire from the altar, and he threw it down upon the earth, and the thunder crashed, and lightning flashed, and there was terrible earthquake. So this is the end of the seventh sign, the seventh seal, and what we see is judgment. The same phrasing is in Exodus. This is what describes what Moses does to the land of Egypt. Now, when we talked about the Exodus a while ago, why does God do the plagues of Egypt? Do you remember?
To show power over the gods of Egypt.
Absolutely. It's power over the gods of Egypt. So all the gods of so the things that they worshipped instead of Yahweh, he showed that he was superior. It was a god-off, is what it was. That's what it is. So it's a god-off. Same thing. When Elijah worships versus Baal, the prophets of Baal say, we worship Baal. Oh, and he's like, hey, and Elijah's making fun of him. Maybe your God's asleep. You know, maybe you got to yell louder. You know, they're screaming louder. Maybe you got to cut yourselves. They're cutting themselves. Come on, Baal, right? Consumer. That is to show the superiority of Yahweh to these other powers. Now, by the way, were the priests of Egypt able to do some amazing things? Yes, because there are demonic powers underneath. There was spiritual warfare underneath it. There was a basis for their hopes in these demonic powers. They did gain stuff from selling their souls. But Yahweh is superior, and that's what we see here. So now, the first four angels, I'm going to spoil it for you a little bit. You're going to see very similar to the plagues of Egypt. Are going to be in these four trumpet blasts. So here you go. Starting right here, verse 6. Then the seven angels with the seven trumpets prepared to blow their mighty horns. And the first angel blew the trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were thrown down to the earth. 1/3 of the earth and was set fire to. 1/3 of the trees were burned, and the grasses were all burned. Now, a couple things to notice of importance. These elements of whether or not it's the earth or the trees. Why is this important? Well, I'll spoil it. You're seeing, like the 6 days of creation, when he sets out the 6 days of creation, it's the creation of a land, a special land for God to meet humanity on and walk in the garden. So what you're going to see is with these four, is you're going to see the 6 days of creation uncreated. Does that make sense? Because it's the same idea. This area that was supposed to be a temple to meet with God in, it's got dry rot. It's got stuff. And he's coming in and taking it down to the studs. He's like, we got to tear this down, we got to tear this down, we got to tear this down. And burn it, consume it up. Which, by the way, when we look at Revelation, how does Revelation end? God wins, and a new heaven, new earth, right? Without the dry rot. That's the idea. So we see a similarity. When they go into Jericho, when they go into Promised Land, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to tear down the idols. They're supposed to drive all that stuff out so it's a holy land. But what don't they do? They don't do that. They just pick up, start worshiping the gods of the land when they're in there. And it causes problems. So what's God do? God sends in plagues. God sends in locusts. God sends in, and sins, drives them out and gets them ready. And then they come back in and, okay, we're serious this time. But then Jesus comes in, right? And then when Jesus' gospel, as he's in the Gospels, he's walking around, and some people are responding. Thank God some people are responding, but not everybody. And a lot of the people that have power still prefer the power, still worshiping their sources of power instead of worshiping Yahweh. And as then Jesus pronounces woes on Jerusalem, woe to Jerusalem. He says, oh boy, if only you would have accepted. But the temple's going to be flattened. The city's going to be destroyed. And it is. But it's not because God's mad. It's not because God's mean. It's because these things are poison. It's like an operating room that's no longer holy or clean. It needs to be sterilized so that life can come in. And
start all over again.
yeah, I mean that's a sense. That's what we're seeing. So we've seen going into the Promised Land. We see very similar things to what's happening in Revelation. We see them being freed. We see the people, the Israelites, being freed from Egypt in a very similar way. These things all are kind of repeating because God has to do the same things. You could almost say, listen, if somebody's going to do surgery, what do they have to do? They have to clear away all the dead tissue, and they have to put stuff that kills stuff to make sure no bacteria gets into the new thing. There's a lot of similarities of this imagery is what we're seeing. So we see these themes. The other thing you're going to see repeatedly here is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And why is 1/3 significant? I will tell you, it's not the number that's significant. There may be some significance in the number, but I don't think that that's more important. I think what is most important is the fact that it's not 100%. Because you're going to see this. So I said seven seals, right? 7 trumpets, then 7 bowls. The 7 bowls, it's 100%. The 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, 1/3. It's kind of like when your kids are misbehaving and you're like, okay, I'm going to take some of your allowance, make a better choice. So even in the judgment here, as bad as it is, it's a restrained judgment. It's a restrained judgment because John, again, Toby's like, I never got an allowance. Dad took 100% of the allowance all the time. Yeah, there's that. That's what we're seeing. So we see the trees burned up. But it's not all the trees. There's a sense of, come on, guys. It's because so many times people are like, boy, I would have been a Christian, but I was afraid, is the idea. I was afraid to do these things. Well, what he's doing is he's making it more fearful. He's like, okay, I'm making it more uncomfortable. Will you make the decision? Which is also, remember, in Egypt. Pharaoh, all you have to do is let the people go. Plague after plague after plague, and Pharaoh hardened his heart. So we see that parallel. Second angel blew the trumpet, and a great mountain of fire was thrown down into the sea. 1/3 of the water and all things, 1/3 of the things living in the sea, 1/3 of the ships were on the sea were destroyed. There's a sense of destruction. Now, it is unmaking of the 7 days. Remember, the 7 days you separate the water and the dry land. That gets wiped out. What's he also do? Matching that is the day that he makes the water teeming with life. And here what we see is in judgment, he's judging, he's poisoning the dead life. He's getting rid of that. There's a unmaking is what's happening here. The third angel blew their trumpet, and a great star fell out of the sky, burning like a torch. It fell into the third of the rivers were springs of water, the rivers and the springs of water, and the name of the star was bitterness or wormwood. His name was, and it made 1/3 of the water bitter. Bitter there is poison. And many people died from drinking the water. Now, why is the water important? Okay, imagery in the Bible. The star that fell. Who was the star that fell? Is it a who or a what? It could be a what. Could it be a meteorite poisoning world? It could be, listen, sometimes locust or locust. A lot of times when stars fall, I will say it's not literal because a star falling on earth would happen. What would happen? Gone. There's no, a star, planet loses. That's how it goes. If it was literal, we know it's not literal. It's symbolic to some level. Are we talking about a meteorite, downward symbol, the symbolicness is meteorite? Okay, that's great. And we're talking about poison, but it doesn't matter. What all of these are functioning doing is, let's say that your hope is in your physical health. Let's say your hope is in that I'm so wealthy and rich. If your hope is in all of these other things, what all of these do is strip away. Exactly how God does it, it doesn't matter. What matters is that he does. He's breaking down your idols. Because first of all, it's absurd that we would stare at the creator of the universe and say no. That's absurd. And he's trying to show how absurd it is. And we're all cocky because we think we have these other things standing behind us. And he's like, you don't got that. You don't got that. So he's trying to put us out of being in rebellion into being. The way that we are, our purpose. Everybody says, oh, I wish I knew my purpose. Let me tell you, you cannot make your purpose up. Purpose is determined by the creator of something. The item cannot define its purpose. Purpose is defined by creator. Always. When people fail to find purpose, it's because they're not looking to the creator. It doesn't matter how confident they stand in their fitness or in their health or in their wealth or whatever. It doesn't matter about all of that. All of that fails apart from being one. And it is. People die for lack of purpose. And that's what we see is we see this judgment. You know, he's making it harder and harder to be in that poisoned state.
According to the asterisk, the name of the star was Wormwood.
Yes. Yeah. Now, biblical parallels. When the people were in the wilderness, the water was bitter. It was poisonous. It was not good. So they're like, we're going to die out here. Moses throws a stick in the water, symbolic of God's work, and he turns the poisonous water into fresh water. So that's the Old Testament link. The other link, Jesus defines himself as living water. Does that make sense? Now, if the star that falls from the sky is figurative and we're talking demonic, Satan, the Antichrist maybe. I will say Antichrist, but I'll say it as little a kind of Antichrist. Because there's a sense where what he is doing is he's coming down into the world and turning clean water, good water, poison. Whereas Jesus comes down into the world and offers living water. Does that make sense? So we're kind of seeing that what the other promises is death. What Jesus promises is life. Then the fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, and then they became dark, and 1/3 of the day went dark, and 1/3 of the night. Okay, are we talking angels and demons? And we might be, but remember, this is more parallel to the 6 days of creation, the establishment of the land. Right? The promised land, the land that has purpose. So he establishes the sun, moon, and stars to govern all of this, to give people this. So, and in the plagues of Egypt, one of the things he does is he takes away the stars. Why? Because they worship the stars in Egypt. So what's he do? He gives them darkness. Darkness so much they can't see anything. Of course, is the darkness everywhere? It's not everywhere. Around at Goshen, right, where the Israelites are. They have a sun, they have all that. Because he still shows his protection. And I will say this, that it's of this judgment, we get a sense that God's already talked about protecting those who are sealed. Because what this is for is this is to drive the people that are still willful in. And then I look and I heard a single eagle.
Eagle.
That's a better word, eagle. A single eagle crying loudly as it flew through the air. Terror, terror, terror to all who belong to this world because of what will happen when the last 3 angels blow their trumpets. Woe, woe, woe is what it is. Woe is the other sense of that word, terror. The woes, so Ezekiel declares woes on Israel for being disobedient. Jesus declared 3 woes on Jerusalem for disobedience. So we see, it's the same parallel. Okay, the eagle. What's the eagle, Rick? Okay. Again, you're going to find somebody that's going to go, oh, look, it's an eagle. America's the eagle, so this is America. And America's a good guy. Gosh, I wish that's the case. But what would it mean for the first 1,600 years that believers read this? The book of Revelation is always supposed to be helpful for us. It's not in case of the end of the world, break glass. In case it would have been like in this lock. Where's in a lockbox? We'll get to it when the Antichrist rolls. Open up Revelation. No, it's every day. It could be. I'll say this. I will say that it is possible. Take the lowest thing. It's possible that maybe. Gosh. Because there's another place where like Israel is talked about as a woman. She's being attacked. And the eagle comes in and rescues Israel. And at this place, we know it's Israel, so we see an eagle rescuing Israel. And we're like, wow, on the world stage, isn't it great? America is an ally of Israel. Isn't this beautiful? Boy, that's great. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I will say the most hopeful thing I have is from Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, Israel is attacked by the rest of the world, but it's not everybody. There are some nations that side with Israel. And of those nations are the nations of like Tarshish, which is symbolic of the world far away. So that I think there's a better place where like, hey, I think we might be Tarshish. Maybe. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's not about politics. If you're TBN says, oh, this is why we have a satellite up in outer space. And if the rapture comes and all the Christians leave the world, then this is the satellite that's going to tell everybody, hey, guess what? The bad stuff's happening. If as bad as it was, because believe it or not, all those things we talked about, losing 1/3 of the population, all that's not the woe, woe, woes. You're like, wow, that seems pretty bad. 2.5 billion people dead? That's a bad day. But that's not the woes. You're like, oh. Is it a satellite? Rick, I don't know. It's a satellite. It's silly. It could be. Could be a satellite. It could be, it could be the Bible just sitting on a desk, and it's the message, and people open it up, and hey, it says there's more woes coming. Could be that. If I like symbology, the four aspects of God that we see in the living beings. We see the eagle as part of it. We see that's kind of representative of the community of faith is. So there's a quickness to it. Maybe you could say maybe it's the church still running around telling people about Jesus. Because of the quickness. I think that's a possibility. It could be just an image to say, hey, things are going to get worse. I will say this about it. And I do think that this is very interesting. So with the word that's translated in English as eagle, isn't eagle always in Greek? It could also be vulture. Because they see those as raptors that feed on carrion. Which, by the way, so do eagles. If you've been to like Alaska, we don't really have a lot of ravens in Alaska or a lot of seagulls in Alaska because the bald eagles do that job. And they do it well. You go to like the fish processing place, there's bald eagles everywhere. Because, why hunt for your food if you could eat it for free, right? It's like, I like that they have a word. So for us, when we think of eagle, we think of the swiftness, like swift like an eagle, which is an image from the Old Testament with eagles also. But I think also the vulture is the sense that we see vultures hanging around death and doing that. I think that those two elements are what we're seeing. We're seeing the swiftness of how things come, and we're also seeing the death. Some death and the destruction. I think the ominous elements. So those are, and that gets masked a little bit in English. All right, so those first 4 trumpets, those were the fun ones. Now we're going to move. Now the first 4, just like the first 4 horsemen, all kind of looked like they almost went out together at the same time, and they affected the world and all that sort of stuff. They weren't necessarily sequential. And they affected the world. And then when we went to 5th and 6th, we pull out our scope and we're looking at spiritual battle, and that's both heaven and earth kind of stuff. We're going to see the same thing with these trumpets. So as we've kind of focused on the battle or the effects, the kind of the natural effects, now we're going to go more spiritual here. Then the 5th angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen to earth from the sky, and he was given is this the same star that fell earlier? Potentially. And he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. When he opened it, smoke poured out and through, as though through a huge furnace. And the sunlight in the air turned to darkness and smoke. So that's that idea of destruction coming out of this. Not very good. Who do we think the fallen angel is? What's that? Good guess. Potentially. I think that's good. There's some people that have a problem with it because he seems to be performing a function from God here, and they're like, I don't want to think that God ever uses Satan to do anything. But I'm not sure. When I looked, God used Satan with Job, doesn't he? Yeah. But he limits him, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to see that this angel, this fallen angel, is limited. He's not able to do everything he wants to do, because he's still performing a function. I know this sounds really gross. Yeah. Okay, I only had Juliet. So one thing that you can do if you have a really bad wound that starts going bad on you is you can use maggots. And the maggots will eat the dead part of the body. And it's a way to heal. Very gross way to heal, right? So, yeah. We don't know what, there's a sense where God is using this. Hey, and God does it. Like, this is the thing that bothers Habakkuk in Habakkuk. He's like, how can you use these things, these evil Babylonians? Don't you know what they do to people? And he goes, yeah, I know what they do to people.
So doesn't sit back to it reflecting the Old Testament over and over again.
Over and over again.
Old Testament. God used evil, wicked people in his plan.
Yes. So that's what we see. So we see this. Now here we go. Here's the one everybody loves. Then the locusts came from the smoke and descended into the earth, and they were given power to sting like scorpions, and they were told not to harm the grass or the plants or the trees, but only the people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. It's important. They told them not to kill them, but to torture them for the people that are attacking. For 5 months with pain, like the pain of scorpion stings. In those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee them. Is this a bad thing or a good thing?
Well, if you're lucky, you still have a chance to accept Christ.
That's the idea. The idea is even here we're seeing grace and mercy. He's not sending them to hell. He's like, okay, are you sure you want to be this way? Are you sure you don't want to submit? I don't want to bow the knee. Okay, but means you're going to get consumed. It's the sense of it. There's a sense even here. And then the locusts. We're like, are we locusts? So has God used locusts before?
Yes.
Yes. God uses locusts in the Old Testament. Absolutely. Literally locusts. But does he and even with Israel, he sends locusts at one point. But not only does he send locusts in some of the minor prophets, sometimes he sends the Assyrians, and they're called locusts. Well, are they locusts or are they Assyrians? Yes, they're both. Why? Because they do the same thing. If our hope is we look at it and go, oh, look at all the food we have. We are wealthy. We don't need to worry about God because we got everything taken care of. We're so comfortable. God goes, well, I'm going to take your comfort away because that puts you in the wrong spot. Because that's poison. That thinking that we are God of the universe is poison to us. So he will send the maggots. He will do the things to pull those things away. So what we have here is we have this picture, and this is the one that everybody quotes. You turn this on History Channel at late night, and you're going to have somebody quote this verse. I tell you, there'll be the locusts looked like horses prepared for battle, and they had heads like gold crowns on their heads, and their faces looked like human faces, and they had hair like women's hair, and teeth like the teeth of a lion. They wore armor made of iron, and their wings roared like an army of chariots. There's a lot of like, which is telling us it's not exactly this, it's something similar. That's kind of the sense of it. Symbolic of stuff. Why does it matter their armor's made of iron? The idea is that it's hard armor that we can't defeat. That's the sense of it, is all of these things. They had tails that stung like scorpions. In 5 months, they had power to torment people. So that's what we see here. Could it be locust? Yeah, sure. It could be locust. It could be bugs. Could it be aliens? It could be aliens. It could be, sure. You know what aliens are? They're an army from heaven that would cause the same thing. Sure. Could be aliens. It could be demons. Fantastic. It's demons. Could it be the Huns? Because people have said, oh my gosh, they had long hair like this coming in, and it judged Christendom. They're like, we've lost our mind, and here, look, these that God sends these or Muslim hordes to come in and wipe out because we haven't been loyal. Yeah, because our hope was in our gold or our cathedrals or all this sort of stuff. It could be all of those things.
Gideon and the Midianites, that was another one. They were like locusts covering the land.
Exactly. Stripped it of everything. So the idea isn't, it's not important to know exactly what it is. We're like, oh, it sounds like helicopters. Okay, sounds like great. Sounds like drones. God's going to release drones. It looks like a drone. So it does look like a drone swarm. But it doesn't have to be a drone swarm. It's not like we've been waiting for 2,000 years for suddenly drone technology to be out there. Oh, AI is there now. We can do it. It could happen at any point. It's symbolic. What's important is the idea that God will strip away these things that are in rebellion and these false idols. And it's a spiritual warfare as well as getting humanity. Not only is humanity submitting, but the spiritual world that's in rebellion is submitting at the same time. Their king is the angel from the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon. And in Greek, Apollyon, the destroyer. The first terror is past, but look, 2 more are coming. I don't know the symbology of why it's Apollo. The Greek god. I would say that if we really wanted to run that way, I would suggest that there's a strong likelihood that the gods of the pagan world are celestial beings in rebellion. So you're like, are we saying Apollo? We might be saying Apollo. But I thought Apollo was good. Well, I don't know. Apollo did stuff to people that he wanted to. Yeah, I don't know. Or it could just be a similar name. But it is a spiritual power. It is a spiritual being. That's the other thing about those locusts and all those things. It could be also what you're seeing there is it's another one of those mixed up beings that we see as celestial beings like seraphim. Seraphim are dragons, right? They're winged serpents is what a seraphim is. Cherubim, what are cherubim? Cherubim are described as many things. They could be multi-faced things in Ezekiel, but in here, a lot of times in other imagery, ancient Near East imagery would be things like griffins or cherubim. Same. Griffin, cherubim, same idea. So what we see here is things like cherubim that are disformed. So you get the idea that the celestial beings that rebelled, this could be them. That's a parallel. I should say this, I'm going to break some of your art imagery in your head. Angel is not really a type of being, it's a mission, and the mission is to be a messenger. But some celestial beings, when we look at it like this, some celestial beings that we say are angels, I would even say most of the celestial beings that we call angels in the Bible don't have wings. Don't hate me. How do I know this? Because people don't recognize they're angels until they're in the middle of the conversation.
Is there
say with the caveat of like the
With like
cherubim have wings, seraphim have wings.
But I mean, like a winged human being with a halo.
The closest would be the living being that's standing up, because one living being has the face of a man, one has the face, and that would be the case.
That's pretty rare.
Very rare. Which is how come Paul could say, in that way, some of you have entertained angels without knowing it. Again, wings would be a pretty big giveaway. Hey, guy with wings.
Angels being messenger again throughout Old Testament.
Yeah, and if we really want to get geeky and sit down and talk about speciation, the idea that you have reproducible offspring would suggest that you're the same species. So if angels can interbreed with humanity, then there's a species of man. They're a race of men, which is kind of an interesting. There you go.
But that's angel being messenger, not angel being cherubim.
Not being cherubim, messenger, because there's other roles of celestial beings. Yeah. Boy, that's fun. See, and if we went down to the pub and talked about it like this, we'd be like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and we'd come away with the Lion Witch wardrobe and Lord of the Rings. All right, here you go. Then the sixth angel blew their trumpet, and I heard a voice speaking from the four horns of the gold altar, and it stands on the presence of God. And this voice said to the six angels who held the trumpet, "Release the four angels who were bound to the great Euphrates River." These are the four angels that have been prepared for this hour and day and month and year, and they turned loose to kill 1/3 of all the people on the earth. And I heard the size of their army, which was 200 million mounted troops. Wow, that sounds scary. Who is this group? I don't know. Some folks like to say this is the group that's captured after the flood. I don't know. I just know it's some demonic horde or some monster horde that's coming in, again, pronouncing judgment, same sort of thing. And in my vision, I saw the horses and the riders sitting on them, and the riders were armored with red, and fiery red, and dark blue and yellow. The horses had heads that looked like lions, so now we see that kind of griffin similarity also. And the mouth, the fire and smoke, yeah, because griffins, remember a few weeks ago when we talked about these images, griffins are all around them. Griffins were in Egypt before Moses. Griffins were in Assyria before the Bible. We've got griffins, that's kind of imagery in the Hittite culture north. So we got them all around. Anyway. So that's the imagery that we see. 1/3 of the people on earth were killed by the three plagues, by the fire, the smoke, and the burning. That phrase, fire, smoke, and burning, we have seen that also. That's played a major role in another story in the Bible. You remember where sulfur rains down from the heavens? Remember that story? Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah. It came up from the mouth of the horses. Their power was in the mouths and in their tails were heads like snakes, and the power to injure people. That similarity of judgment, same thing, Sodom and Gomorrah. Why was Sodom and Gomorrah judged? Was sexual immorality and all that nastiness. But we see idolatry being judged. We see all of these willful ways of being judged. And when we see sexual immorality, we're talking rape, we're talking a lot of ugly stuff that's all kind of being put out there. But the people who did not die from these plagues, and this is the part of the verse that tells us why it's 6 trumpets. Why have we done this? Why have we done 1/3? But the people who did not die in these plagues still refused to repent of their evil deeds and turn to God. But instead, now you see what all of the things they did. But they continued to worship demons made of gold, silver, bronze, stone, wood, like Egypt, like the Canaanites did. Same idea. That neither could hear nor walk, and they did not repent of the murders, of the witchcraft, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts. So we see Sodom and Gomorrah, we see Jericho, we see all of that in this judgment. Then I saw another mighty angel coming down. So now we get to now it's a vision within a vision. We got time. A vision within a vision. Then I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, surrounded by a cloud with a rainbow over his head. By the way, I said angels don't have wings. Okay. Who this angel is, or some don't, a lot don't. This one doesn't have wings, if that'll help you guess who this is.
Gabriel?
I would say it's the angel of the Lord from the Old Testament, which would be Jesus. How do we know this? Okay, because in the Bible, rainbow is not about the colors. Not about the colors. It's about the shape. It's the weapon of God is over the top of it. So that's always it. So rainbow, the rainbow in Hebrew, it's about the shape. It's not about. So if I said, if I was going to be honest in a boy, this would be hard. An honest modern telling is, and God placed his rifle in the sky, we wouldn't have any confusion. And that's what we see. We see the arc of it. Because it's his bow. He laid his bow down, his weapon. So when we
Does it say bow in the Old Testament?
What's that?
In that story?
It just says bow.
Oh, it doesn't say
I placed my bow in the clouds. That's what it is. So we see the weapon over the top of this. That gives us a hint of who this guy is. We're like, wait. I know who it is. His face shone like the sun. Oh, wait, we saw Jesus in an earlier image. His face was shining like this, right? And his feet were like pillars of fire. Remember Jesus earlier had the bronze feet? Like molten bronze. We're like, oh, I see what you did here. In his hand was a small scroll that had been opened. It stood with his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. And he gave a great shout like a lion of Judah. That's the idea. We're like, oh, I got it. And the fact that he strides the land and sea is the idea of Jesus walking water, walking on land, same image. We should see all these images flood into this. And we go, I know who this guy is. And when he shouted, the seven thunders answered. Who is this man that even the storms listen to him? Jesus. That's the sense of it. And when the seven thunders spoke, I was about to write, but I heard a voice in heaven say, keep secret what the seven thunders said and don't write it down. And you're like, well, John, why'd you put it in your book?
Teacher.
I think it's in the book so that we know that there's stuff that we're not going to know.
Yes.
If you don't understand exactly how this is all going to roll out, that's part of the plan. So that it's revealed. That when it happens, we go, oh, that makes sense. That's the sense of it. Then the angel I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised his hand toward heaven, and he swore an oath in the name of the one who lives forever and ever, and he created the heavens and the earth in them, and the earth and everything in it, and the sea and everything in it. And he said, so this is a picture of Jesus swearing to the Father, the same kind of thing that he did in his ministry. So we're like, oh, this guy here in the gospel, same. There will be no more delay when the seven angels blow their trumpets. God's mysterious plan will be fulfilled. It happened just as it was announced in his servants, the prophets. So this is a vision within a vision, and now there's another vision within a vision. So now we go really quick, and we'll go through this one fast. Quick, fast, and hurry. Then a voice in heaven spoke to me again. He said, go ahead and open the scroll take the open scroll from his hand. And the angel is the one standing on the sand and the sea. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the small scroll. Yes, take it and eat it. He said, it will be sweet as honey in your mouth, but it will be sour in your stomach. So I took the small scroll with my hand, from the hand of the angel, and I ate it. And it was sweet in my mouth, and when I swallowed it, it turned my stomach sour. And then I was told, you must prophesy against many nations, peoples, nations, languages, and kings. So this idea of this rebellion, that's what we're going to do. And what we see is then we zero in on this, and this is the vision of the prophets that everybody talks about, the other one. So then I was given a measuring stick, and I was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar and count the number of worshipers, but do not measure the outer courtyard, for it has been turned over to the nations. This is an idea that Jerusalem and Israel had been occupied at this point. And they'll trample the holy city for 42 months, and I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will be clothed in burlap and will prophesy for 1,260 days. Okay, the two witnesses, lots of questions who these guys are. We got some theories. I'll read it some more. These two prophets are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of all the earth. And if anyone harms them, if the fire flashes from their mouths and consumes their enemies, and if anyone tries to harm them, must die. They have the power to shut down the sky with no rain. Will fall as long as they are to prophesy, and there's power for them to turn rivers and oceans into blood, and they will strike down the earth, and they will every kind of plague as often as you wish. So who these guys are? Okay, so, yes. Moses? Okay.
Just a guess.
Depends how literal this is. Very literal. People have thought Enoch and Elijah. Why Enoch is a guy in Genesis who walks with God and then goes up. The images of walking with God is important in the Bible because that's promise of the promised land. So you get a sense of him going in. Could be Enoch, could be Elijah, because these are the two people that we don't see die in the Bible. Both of them head up. Okay, that's great. So I got Enoch and Elijah up there. That's possible. Another possibility, Enoch. No, not Enoch. Get rid of it. Elijah and Moses. And why Elijah and Moses? We say, well, Moses died. Well, who are the two people talking to Jesus on the Mount Transfiguration? Moses and Elijah. So you're like, oh, these two guys, yes.
But also, Elijah was the one who could stop the rain, and Moses was the one who could change
Water the blood.
Yep.
Yes.
And isn't that pretty connecting to the Old Testament?
Pretty connected. Probably, I think that's a strong likelihood. I think that's the strongest argument, is that linkage of, and if you notice, those are parts I underlined. Trying to help you out. Could be those things. It could be also symbolic. It could be symbolic of, just like the reason that, because the two lampstands, that makes it the symbolism of the lampstands. We think of it could be, remember the believing community before Christ and after Christ. You've got the 12 disciples, and you've got the 12 patriarchs of Israel. 12. So we see that similarity. It could be those guys.
So I was thinking with the lampstands, could it possibly not be two individuals?
It could be
groups.
Israel. It could be Israel. It could be Christianity. It could be the people of the community following. It could be that. Absolutely. Or if you believe in a rapture of the church and the church is gone, and then the focus on Israel, which is kind of dispensational thought, what they would say is it's Israel and Judah because they're left witnessing. It could be. I don't know. Again, I'm on the reception committee, not the planning committee. What's important is the idea of, again, this is still allowing people to have repented, and then there's still people that are making professions. But after 3.5 days, God breathed life into them. They stood up, terror struck, which is reasonable. Terror struck on everybody that was staring at them, and there was a loud voice in heaven, and the two